Welcome to True View, where we bring the small group experience to homes and hearts. I'm Jamie Shaver, and this is my co-host, Julie Van Gorp. And today we have with us Gina Erminger, Alicia Frick, and Holly Depew. Thanks so much, ladies, for joining us.
You're welcome.
Jamie, one of the reasons that we want to look at the topic that we are today, which is endangered families, but they are endangered and worth fighting for. And it's so much because we really have a changing definition of what a family is. And I think,
Is there even a definition?
Well, I think the thing is, we want to go back and go, what is the origin of families? Yeah, I'm one of those people, you say, go back to the beginning and say, if you're going to talk about a topic, we need to know what it is we're discussing. So what is the origin of families? Who originated, or where did the whole concept of family come into being?
The mind of God is my understanding. That was his idea, to put a man and a woman together and see what happened. No. Bless them with offspring to kind of perpetuate the whole idea.
Well, I think family's been around for all eternity. Because actually, God himself represents a family. Mm-hmm. When we see the picture of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as one, it's a beautiful picture right there of family. So really, that communion and that family unit has been intact for all eternity.
For always. That's right. And so interesting with that concept, Jamie, is that there are three different persons of the Trinity. As Christians, we believe the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And yet they all have three different roles. And it's not where one tries to exalt themselves over the other one. In so many ways, wanting to say they're all three critical roles. They're all important roles. They interrelate. And together they're better than any one of them would be separately.
Absolutely. And Psalm 68:6 says, God sets the lonely in families, and he leads forth the prisoners with singing. But the rebellious live in a sun-scorched land. God wants people in families.
Absolutely.
And another scripture that I love, Jamie, is Psalm 139. He gives the barren woman a home, making her the joyous mother of children. That he knew that was one of the things. In fact, the word Eve even means life giver. And so we look and say, from the time that we were in the garden and he said, it's not fit for man to be alone, I will make him a suitable helpmate. He made Eve, and as you had said, Holly, kind of put them together, and whatever's going to happen, he kind of knew. But that whole aspect of be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth, that was part of his plan from the very beginning.
Well, I also look and see how God is the father who kind of sets the standard, the head of the household, that we see in that image of human fathers, and how Jesus then kind of is like the woman. And I think it's amazing because in that way, if we really look at that, as we are women as life givers, so is Jesus. I mean, he is the one who made life possible for us, because really we were supposed to die after the sin in the garden. Right. And yet it is him who brought us that life.
And as you say that, Jamie, the reality is that Jesus submitted to his Father's will to go on the cross, and he calls the wife to submit to the husband's will, but what? For the glory that was set before him. And the Father was able to exalt the Son once he was willing to submit. It was for the glory, and the Father's joy is to give all exaltation to his Son Jesus. And really, women are for the glory of their husbands. We really are that place where they're all about wanting us to have that glory in that spot too. So,
So when you guys look at the family unit, and what are some issues that you see would you say are most common in our culture right now?
I would say divorce. I'm sorry, go for it.
No, Gina, I just think what stood out to me when you were talking is just about who's in charge. There's such a debate about women can do everything that men are doing. Well, sure, we probably could, but should we have to? Is that really the way God designed it to? Do we have to have all that pressure? I vote no. Let them, the responsibility and the weight fall on them, and I'll be second. That's okay. I have enough on my plate. I don't need his job and mine.
Well, and then there's that pressure, too, for families to be so busy that there's not a value on spending family time and making the family a priority, because everybody's got their own agendas going here and there. The kids have their sports and activities, and parents have their jobs, their careers, outside activities that they're involved in. And so there's not that priority to spend time as a family unit and really set time to connect.
Know each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love when I look over here because I just see like amazing godly counsel. I know, Alicia, you've been a counselor, right? A Christian counselor, a Christian family counselor now for quite some time. And Holly, you as well. You've got social service experience as well as a guidance counselor in a school setting.
Right.
So it's just exciting because I really feel like with your experience, you've been around a lot of families. And what would you say? Do you have anything to add to what she has said as far as where the family's going? Do you see any red flags?
Yeah, we are just being torn apart where people aren't as focused, like she said, on the family as a unit. It's what satisfies me as a person. Mom wants the job and the extracurriculars for herself to become, actualize whatever it is that she feels she needs to be happy in life. Dad, of course, has the job and things that he's interested in with the guys, and then we have to get all the kids to karate and language and music and all the things that are going to make them the wonderful people that they should be. Who's worried about the whole, the system? Is that functioning?
Well, and as you said that, Holly, because you both are clearly working women. You are mothers, but you're also working because you're counselors. Do you think that fulfilling the role of a mother means necessarily that a woman can't be working outside the home? Or do you think that you can and still fulfill that role?
Well, I guess we'd be liars if we said that.
Right.
You can. For myself, there has been a season when I did step back from work and just focus on my children when they were very young, and that was needed. I do see it as my role to get them less dependent on me. So now that they're all in school full time and I have some free time, I've rejoined the workforce to use the gifts that God's given me for other families that need that.
And you know what, Gina? When I just think Italian, it makes me think family.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So tell me, what has been the importance or the significance of family in your own life? Because I know, and thank you, but you've invited me to some of your family functions, and they're big.
Yeah, well, and the thing that's funny is I have a very small Italian family. But
It's all relative, right?
It is, yeah, wink, wink. But we do invite people that technically aren't even our family, and they become part of our family. We just have a lot of love to give. But there's just a great bond. Like, my family is very, very close, and we spend a lot of time together. And it's the memories that make everything so special.
Well, you know, even as you say that, Gina, and we were talking before about the reality that God is the one who developed families. What do you think are the real reasons? Again, what are the benefits of families? Or we'll never probably know this side of heaven all the reasons that God put us in families, but what are some of the benefits? You talked memories. What are some other things that you get from being in a family?
Well, as we said at the beginning, one of the purposes I've seen is to model God and the Trinity to other people. You know, to see how the family works as a unit in ministry. I know some of the times that I feel the closest to my husband and my family is when I'm ministering with him and reaching out and serving or having people to our home. And I think that's just one of the main purposes, is to model that to others, and so that they can see God through that connection and through the relationship that we have.
You know, and as you say that, Alicia, I think, again, God is a covenant-keeping God. And so how do you see the role of the covenant of marriage and how that might reflect God?
Yes. Unfortunately, we don't do that anymore. It's not till death do us part. It's till one of us kind of doesn't feel the way we felt that first time. And yeah, so unfortunately, within the Christian church as well, we're no better at it. We're not sticking to our guns anymore. And the witness is clear that we have lost the right to stand up and say, this is the way, when we can't even do it ourselves.
But and doesn't that in some ways show us why some people are having a hard time seeing God as a God who will never leave them or forsake them, which is what he says if they've got parents who are supposed to be in a covenant relationship that was to reflect his, and yet it is kind of, well, until I feel like leaving or until I see someone or something that's better along the way. So what are some other things that you feel that you yourself have gotten from family, or that you see in other families as benefits? Because there certainly are a lot of them, I think.
Being exposed to so many different kinds of families, I think, is amazing that you just get a flavor for how big God is. I mean, every person you meet, you see some different aspect of his creativity, and things that I don't possess myself, I can just marvel at that those abilities exist. I don't have musical ability, and I covet that at times. That it's so amazing to me and brings me closer to God, and so I admire that in other people and seeing how he's crafted us all just so uniquely.
Well, and for children, parents serve as models for, how to grow, how to mature, how to handle emotions. And so that's something, God's created that parents to train and teach. I know I've learned a lot from my parents, specifically on the Christian life. And I was blessed to grow up in a Christian home. And so seeing my parents model that in their faith has really enabled me to have a strong faith myself. And I have made it my own. I haven't just, followed on their tail strings, but it was really neat to see that modeled for me.
And did you see that, for all three of you, did you see a different role that your father served in the home than your mother, assuming that you came from an intact family, or?
My father was always the head of the household. He was definitely, my mom was the nurturer. She was the one that took care of everything. But my father definitely was. We respected him as that role. Not
Just
that
their voices were scary.
I know.
I was like, did God do that on purpose? Like, sometimes it's like the booming, like,
Wait till
what
your
did
father
I
gets
say?
home.
And I was like,
Well, the funny thing is, last night, my husband and I were like, go to bed, go to bed, go to bed. We must have said it like a million times. And then finally, my husband raised his voice, and he said, Julia, you go tell your brother right now, go to bed now. Julia goes upstairs, and she's kind of giggling a little, and she says, Matt, Daddy is mad. It's time for us to go to bed. But half the time when I say anything, they're just like, whatever. Like, they listen to me, but they can really definitely mess around with me a little more. But when my husband puts his foot down,
It's kind of like the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You kind of go, the fear of the Father in the sense of a reverent awe that shows respect for that role in the home. So,
and I do think that has a huge impact on our society when we looked at, in the last 50 years, the dramatic rise of divorce. And what does that divorce leave? It's single moms. And I do think that I know for me, even if my husband's out of town and traveling, I can sometimes feel like, oh my gosh, I just wish his voice was here, because it just seems to demand a greater level of obedience, and I'm working towards that for myself. But when I am with my kids more, sometimes it's just harder to parent by yourself, and I feel like that division in the family has caused so many problems.
Oh, I have to jump there because being a child of divorce, my parents divorced when I was 5, so I don't really have family memories of us being together, and nothing infuriates me more than to hear people say, oh, well, children are resilient and it'll be fine. And that is just a load of I can't say, because I'm here in my 4th decade now, and it still affects me every day. That there are things that my children do that I would love to share with my parents, and I can't. Every birthday has to be 2 separate ordeals because they can't be in the same room together. Even at my wedding, one parent was present and one was not. It doesn't ever go away, and
that's
it doesn't
such a
get better.
valid point. That is such a great point, Holly.
And what would you say, though, to those people who say, well, it's not all bad. There's some things that could actually be gained, because now, like, your kids have 2 families to go see. Or, I mean, have you heard this kind of thing from people?
It's kind of something that they say to soothe it and soothe the pain. And yes, I think God can redeem fallen man and what sinful men do, but it's not what he intended. And because of that, there are consequences that resound throughout the person's life.
There can certainly be families that did it better than my parents do, that remain amicable and friendly and can coexist peacefully. And I applaud those that do the hard work of that and making their children the priority and not their own personal issues. But the separation, the loss, doesn't change. That now, yes, we might have 2 families, but every child knows in their heart that they should have a mom and a dad, and all the confusion that trickles down from step families and blended families shouldn't exist for children. They shouldn't have to deal with that.
And what do you see as some of the issues that arise from the increased divorce rate? I mean, you mentioned about kind of those memories and things and dealing, but what are some of the other things that you might see?
Children just struggle with their identity even. Who am I? What do I come from? If I grow up, I saw my dad twice a month growing up. How do you have a relationship like that when you see someone for a few hours a month? How do I learn? I didn't even know until I was an adult myself, what are the characteristics that I have that are similar to my dad? Where did I get this from? Why am I like this? It's a real big hole in a child's heart to not have both parents there who they can interact with daily, who teach them who they are, where they come from.
And their future relationships too. When they're seeking a spouse and they want to get married or pursue that, not having a model for them, not seeing what that looked like in a healthy way, they have a harder time and they struggle with that. When they're ready to marry or to start dating, it creates a lot of anxiety for them, is a big thing.
Guilty.
So how did you cope with that? I mean, what were some things that you did to help make that go away?
I mean, thankfully I did have extended grandparents and aunts and uncles who fed Christ into my life. And so in the midst of all that turmoil, I did have that foundation. But there was still, when you come to the point of making that lifetime commitment and seeing how those before you have failed, there's a lot of fear that, do I have what it takes to do this? Is it even possible? Does anybody do this anymore? Right. Can it really work?
It kind of plants that seed of doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, Satan's always there to create doubt, just like he was in the garden, and it probably does have that, wait a minute, if my parents' marriage failed, is mine going to fail? And to bring that into it. Right. What do you see as the impact that might be and again, there are many people we realize that are single parents, and it is totally not by their choice that they would love. We realize that. So by no means are we saying that, but I think it's that easy divorce, incompatibility, don't even try, kind of the disposable marriage mentality that has infiltrated not just, again, our world, but all too often our church.
Wasn't it Chuck Colson that said, as the family goes, so goes the church?
That's right. And as the church goes, really, so goes the nation. And as the nation goes, so goes,
So it's not surprising we see these huge attacks on the traditional family.
That's right. And Satan always comes to divide, rob, steal, and kill, and divide and conquer. As we're looking, though, and there can be a different impact even on where a young man is raised without a father, let's say in a single parent home, versus the impact on a young woman. What are some of the differences that you might see, or some of the commonalities of having that role missing in a family?
Well, I can certainly speak to having a daughter's heart and missing her daddy, and you're always looking to plug that ache with something. And so it does lead our young girls to promiscuity and needing to feed that. I just want a man to recognize me and to say that I'm valuable, that I'm worth something. And when that's absent, you'll do anything to fill it up, because we're just made to have that craving for a daddy.
And statistics bear that out, Holly. I know that they have seen that girls who do engage in promiscuous behavior are the ones that, by and large, there's a much larger percentage of those who come from that family, the family where the father's absent or is infrequently involved. Have you found that kind of thing to be true, Alicia, as well?
Oh, yeah.
And then we perpetuate the cycle, because these young women become young mothers who the dads don't stick around, and here we go, again, creating generations of fatherlessness.
And what about on sons? What do you see some of the impacts? I know you may not personally have experienced that, but what do you see?
A lot of anger in boys. They really seem to express that that emotion and that longing in anger. And it's taken out different ways, but even little boys, because they don't know how to express it, and they know there's something missing, but they don't, they can't put words to it, or they, for boys it seems to be a more acceptable emotion, and more accepted, and so that's how they kind of express that, and it comes out in other ways too. I
think they're just looking for, what is a man? If you don't grow up with one, all you have is women or bad male role models. What is true godly manhood? What do I do? What are my responsibilities? What does this whole job look like?
Do you think it has impacted even the increased, what I call feminization of the men in our culture today? Have you noticed that or seen that? Or
They're so used to women having to stand up and take charge because they have no choice. Someone has to lead the family that yes, now they're seeing that as mom can be mom and dad.
But do you guys think it's better for a child to be with a single mom or with a dad and fighting?
That is such a touchy subject, and I have thought about that before. Or if it's two homosexuals that are together as opposed to a single parent or
yeah, because
a
you hear
husband
that
and a
all
wife.
the time. I mean,
You
there's
do.
even, I think wasn't it Massachusetts, Julie, where we read that they were really even trying to keep some of these adopted children out of Christian homes because they wanted to make sure these children were more tolerant. And so I look at that and say, what you guys are talking about, if the father's absent, is it going to make a difference if there's two mothers raising a child as a lesbian couple?
Well, I just wanted to go back about better a single parent or two that are fighting. Obviously, you need to address the level of fighting. I mean, I'm not condoning anybody stay together if there's violence or someone's in danger. But just arguing, of course, that is unsettling to a child. And I'll be totally honest, in my Christian marriage, that there are seasons when my husband and I have less liked each other. And that's been very evident to our children. And they've come to us and saying, Mom, all you guys do is argue, and I hear you, at night, even if you try and protect them. But I think being able to say to them, yes, we have times where we disagree, but we're in this for the long haul, whether we like each other for a while or not, is just honest with them about how relationships work. It's not all pie in the sky and happy, shiny rainbows. And you work through the hard parts to get back to the good stuff. I don't know any other way to
and
do
that
it.
can be such an important part, Holly. I know that my daughter, who's got a real sensitive, sweet spirit, but I mean, my husband and I, it won't even be what I say getting, on a 1 to 10, it might be at a 2 or 3, but that sensitive child could be like, don't be arguing, don't be fighting.
Right.
And I quickly say, there's a place where when you are living with each other, there will be disagreements. We are human beings that are sinners, and we're going to come together. But I think what you said, kind of thrashing it out to work it through, to bring to reconciliation, and where you can even go, and I think that role of forgiveness becomes a real issue in families as well, and kind of where you learn, as you were saying, Alicia, that character that is being modeled. How can you see that if what you're saying is, again, if it gets tough, you kind of split?
I loved what you said too, because I remember being in a home where my parents did an excellent job. If they had any disagreement of being super quiet and shutting the door.
Right.
So all I saw is that my mom would get really mad about something and my dad would go do it. And so you can imagine the fun I had after getting married. I was like, da, 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 da. And then something came back at me and I was like, this isn't how it's supposed to be. Right. We don't fight. You're just supposed to do what I say. And it was this whole having to relearn it because it was not modeled, the whole idea that when there is a disagreement, this is how we're going to handle it.
Yeah.
I just thought there wasn't any, that you're just supposed to do what I say.
And that's not how it works.
Yeah, I've learned a lot since then, but yeah.
And so how difficult for children of single parents to see how you resolve conflict if there's no one there to conflict with.
Or if it's always different people because they're dating, and even this cohabitation.
Right.
I mean, what are we teaching with cohabitation? I mean, Gina, what do you think some of the dangers are with that?
Well, I think there's a lot of the anxiety that somebody's going to leave you. Because if these people, well, I guess I'm not really answering your question properly, but I'm thinking cohabitation in the fact where somebody's living with you for 3 months at a time, or maybe 6 months at a time, or a year at a time. That's hard for a child when they can't bond with someone. And it kind of goes back to when we were talking about adoptions and things like that. Even children that, when we were speaking to some of the adoption specialists, were saying that children that are a year old that really never had that bond and love, it comes later in life and it shows. Just like for what you've been saying, when you were 5 and your parents divorced, you lived at different homes, it affects you in different ways. So...
Well, and I think, we do live in a world where there are so many people that are living together without that. What do you see as some of the major impacts of that on our culture?
there's just that fear of commitment that if I actually say I'm in this for good, children just don't know how to do that when we're having boyfriend of the week or whatever, going through that. I know from experience.
It dumbs down family. Like, then there doesn't need to be a knit. Well, I'll just be with so-and-so for a while, and we don't need to get married. We don't need to do this and that.
And do you think we were talking about how God created, and we created all of us for that security, stability, and that's one of the benefits of family is that consistent, stable environment, that rock upon where you go, this is one thing I can count on. Mom and Dad are going to be here, whatever, but it's not just, and we've talked about the impact on children, which is clearly important, but if I'm living with someone and I'm not married to them, and people go, that's just a piece of paper. But do you think it impacts where you're always living kind of with that, well, they could walk out on me tomorrow?
Absolutely.
And how does that impact your heart? I guess that's my whole thing is what's happening to the heart of the men and the women who are involved in those relationships versus the ones that are married and say, we're in this for the long haul.
Well, the ability to attach
Yeah.
just isn't there anymore. They've done research on, one-night stands and people who are consistently having one-night stands and, switching partners. When eventually they do try to settle down, they actually are not able to attach. They've lost that ability because their body gets used to that changing and the one-night stands, and so they just actually aren't even emotionally able to finally attach when they are ready
build up
to.
a callus to emotion and the feelings.
Wow. And going back to the whole aspect that what was the very purpose and design of marriage is to reflect the heart of God, who is the one who is the rock, who is the one who's going to be with us no matter what, who is the one who says, I'm not going to abandon you, I'm not going to forsake you. And yet, like what you were saying, Alicia, in that if you're going from here and there, it's just almost like how we choose the flavor of the month in terms of what God we're going to serve instead, and that idolatry, and we're not reflecting what God's initial purpose of marriage was, which was to be a reflection of the Trinity and a reflection of the heart of God.
So in our churches, how can we come alongside these single people, these single parents? What do you guys think are some things we can do?
I think we absolutely do have to mentor these young people and draw them into a family experience. And the moms and single dads as well, that they're missing out on that just as much as their kids are.
So inviting those families over to be part of your family for a day or an afternoon and really being able to model that for the children.
They can come to my house.
There's always
big
room in
party.
the Italian family. That's right.
We will feed you. We may yell at you. But we'll always love you.
Well,
I love
that's the
it.
important thing. Is that
Thank you for joining us on True View, where we challenge and equip women to live authentic Christian lives. Connect with us on our website or on Facebook. I'm Jamie, this is Julie, and we're committed to truth.